Greetings, kindred. I hope you're all doing well. And the energies are probably starting to hype up already. So you may find yourselves really feeling more energetic than you have done over the last week, because the energies have been pretty sluggish. And, they will go back to being a little bit sluggish in about a week or so. But for the moment, they're very hyped up. And, let's just get into it. So I'm recording this on the 10th of May. The new moon will begin on the 11th of May at 19:59 in the GMT time zone, at 14:59 in the EDT time zone, and on the 12th of May at 4:59 in the AEDT time zone. The moon will be in Aries in the true lifetime sky. This is all about action and challenge, and it's a bit of a Lone Ranger energy, but it's a very competitive energy. And at 22 degrees, this is us mastering the Aryan energy to reach a higher consciousness. Now, in its positive sense, the Aryan energy is very kind of like, the protector, the one who will fight for people's rights. And but he has to be doing it not for fame and glory, which can be one of his negative traits, but for the best of the people involved or the situations involved. So with the Black Moon Lilith conjunct at 23 degrees, I feel like she is really shifting the Aries energy. She's really taking him down into the underworld so he can rebirth into this higher consciousness of the 22 frequency. But there's going to be triggers. Seeing a Yod in the chart with Mars, who is actually the ruler of Aries. He's at 10 degrees in Gemini. Gemini is an air sign. So Mars is in sextile to Uranus, who's actually transiting through Mars's sign of Aries. So Uranus is a little bit away from our new moon. But at 12 degrees, it is a kind of life, death, rebirth process. And with the Black Moon Lilith conjunct, wow, this is deep. And with this Yod between Mars and Uranus all being aimed into the South Node in Ophiuchus, I feel it's going to open up a lot of old wounds, or some kind of justice is going to come to light, or some kind of exposure of our past, of ancient history, of old wounds. And this is a triggering of wounds when it comes to culture, when it comes to humanitarian values. So I just feel something's going to be unearthed, or there's going to be some kind of rebellion maybe that's going to bring something to light, and it's going to be pretty powerful. And we've also got, the South Node is always in opposition to the North Node, and Mercury is at 18 degrees conjunct the North Node, who's at 17 degrees. Now, the South Node in Ophiuchus has reached 3 degrees. So, 3 is the number, again, I said, of life, death and rebirth. It is the number of the inner child. So when we go through spiritual awakenings or ascensions, it's the death of the old to make way for the new. So there's stuff from the past, there's stuff from, even maybe ancient history, maybe there's even karmic stuff that's going to be coming up for individuals or even globally. So, eclipses to me represent global situations, not necessarily just the individual ones. So this eclipse really, with Lilith, because when I see Lilith conjuncting the sun, that is an eclipse. Because she is blocking out the sun's energy, because she's taking him down into the underworld to be remade, to be reborn into a higher consciousness. The eclipses that we're familiar with, they are on a global level normally. But when the black moon Lilith eclipses the sun, it's more an individual thing, but it can be collective. So it can be in groups, it can be in a number of people, it can be occurring at the same time. I mean, especially if your sun sign is Aries, or if you've got your moon in Aries. I really do feel that, that's being triggered at the moment. And if you've got planets in Ophiuchus that are close to the 3-degree mark, like, my sun's actually at 3 degrees, so the South Node is conjuncting my sun right now. It's going to be very triggering. I better watch out for that then. But, it's also very empowering because Mars and Uranus are very, Uranus rules higher consciousness. And Aries in Gemini can really bring something into invention, but in more a material way, but Aries can also be, Aries has to feel like he's being successful. He has to feel like he's worth something in this world. And his worthiness is more created by like pats on the back, like, well done for doing that. Here's a medal. Here's an honour. But that's something that, the Aryan energy, the black moon Lilith conjuncting the sun and moon, she's trying to snap us out of that, needing the approval, needing to feel worthiness. Aries conjunct the black moon Lilith. With the black moon Lilith in Aries, it can be about, performance, like comparing ourselves to other people. It can be very competitive energy, very ego triggering, but in this instance, I really do feel it's bringing up old wounds or old feelings of unworthiness or old cultural wounds or injustices towards humanity. So there are things coming to light. This new moon with the new moon's energy. It doesn't mean to say it's going to happen on the day, but it's definitely going to be happening and occurring in this new moon cycle. And, identity issues are at their highest at the moment because, like I said, the black moon Lilith in Aries does bring up identity issues. And this is what we've been seeing over the last year, these little sparks of identity issues that are going on. But with Jupiter entering into Aquarius, that just emphasizes, the identity issues. And also with Neptune in his own sign of Pisces, we can get stuck in illusion or delusion. If we don't know how to manifest our higher consciousness above the material, even above the natural. So it's not about what we see. It's more about spiritual knowledge. So I really do feel there's some awakenings going on with this new moon energy. And they're going to be fast and furious as well. So, for those of us out there that are not being so affected by this energy, I would say, keep the door open for people to come in that need to talk. And I don't mean your front door. There's so many platforms out there where you can reach out to people that are going through a really dark time right now. Or, have lost their sense of self, their sense of self-empowerment. Who's right, who's wrong. We're still on that one right now. On a global level, the 22 frequency is all about, the dogma of materialism. which will end in a breaking of like relationships or a breaking of bonds, of treaties. I feel there's a breaking of contracts going on here. Whether it is individually or globally, I feel there's going to be kind of like breaking of contracts. And that will create restrictions and blocks on our path to move forward. So I don't know what that's going to be about, but I really am getting a strong sense of exposure about something, or something that's being hidden, but I feel it will come out, but it's going to be a slow process. I think the one thing we need to all come to terms with, or, come into agreement with, that every single one of us is unique. There's no two people in this world that are exactly the same. Not even twins are exactly the same. And, we have to really love and respect who we are as individuals. But if we can look beyond the material, physical, into more the higher consciousness of the divine's energy, the creator of all. Don't just, be earthbound. Look at the universe. And sometimes people need to realise just how fragile life is, or just how fragile, people's mentalities can be at times, because this energy, sometimes we can speak before we think and really wound another person. So, I don't feel we should people please. I don't feel we should back down just to keep the peace. But if you feel that it can really hurt someone, either mentally or physically, that's the only time we should back down or back off. And my motto is always to agree to disagree. But I do feel there's going to be a lot of disagreements. The only thing is with the Black Moon Lilith conjunct the Sun is that we find it very hard to express ourselves. And every time we feel like we're moving forward, it's like taking one step forward and two steps back. It's that kind of energy. It causes a lot of mental health and depression when Lilith eclipses the Sun. But it is about self-liberation. It is about rebirth. It is about self-power. It is about taking our self-power back. And a lot of us are going to be really forced to do that. But many may not want to face that, and will just stay in their self-node energy, which is what we're already familiar with. It's what we're already comfortable with. But in Ophiuchus, the self-node in Ophiuchus is a very uncomfortable energy anyway, since, Ophiuchus is the sign of the persecuted. So with the self-node being in Ophiuchus, it's, bringing up old wounds of times where we were being persecuted, of times where there were injustices. In times of, when things were just very imbalanced. So, it's all about bringing our feminine and masculine into balance, although what I'm seeing here is a very, very masculine energy, a very, very dominating energy. So, beware of bullying, or coming across as being a bully, or a bit of narcissism, or if you're in an abusive relationship. When it comes to abusive relationships, and that's what I'm seeing at the moment, or in the last few podcasts, I've been seeing that issue arising again about abusive relationships. And like I said, they're not just intimate, although there is a vast majority that are. But I think globally and even socially, there has been a lot of issues around bullying. So we really need to watch out for that, So getting back to abusive relationships, the goddess Juno, she's going to be in quincunx to the moon, this new moon, and she will also be in quincunx to the sun. So, this is about just giving in just for the sake of peace, or, maybe for material reasons we're stuck in certain abusive relationships, whether that be work, intimate, friendship, it means there's a dependency on another person, and that's why we can't get out of it, whether sometimes it's emotional blackmail, So, but like I always say, we can't get out of those situations until we're actually ready in ourselves. So we really do need to empower ourselves to know that we deserve better. To know that we need to value ourselves for who we are as a person. Because the one thing abusive relationships are capable of, I should say, is making us feel unworthy, making us feel like we're not enough, or making us feel like we can't survive in this world without that other person, or maybe the other person is not stable, and we may feel if we leave that person, they will fall apart. We've got to come to that realisation that we can only save ourselves. I just feel that really at 14 degrees, Juno is saying a lot of abusive relationships, or the abused in the relationships, are actually reaching their peak right now, but they can't see their way out of it. So there is a shift going on. The universe is creating a shift, but it's not something that can be seen right now. So I won't be surprised over the next 2 weeks if we see a lot of breaking down in relationships again. Maybe with contracts, maybe with, it could be marriage contracts, it can be business contracts, or just verbal contracts or commitments. So again, I'm seeing this breaking down of bonds, of relationships. Because this new moon, many people are being pushed outside of their comfort zones. And it's going to be a very triggering energy. Also, we do have the moon in trine to Pluto, who's in retrograde at the moment at 30 degrees in Sagittarius. Now, we talk about Pluto going into shadow and retrograde, but to be honest, Pluto is always in shadow. It takes ages for him just to move 1 degree, so he's always in shadow, really. But, in retrograde, it doesn't happen very quickly, so when we're talking about a loss of faith, when we're talking about a loss of hope, Pluto in Sagittarius would represent that anyway. But when he shifts back 1 degree, I'm not sure when that is because I haven't checked it. When he does shift back 1 degree, there will be a jolt, there will be a realisation, and out of that we can either achieve self-empowerment, or we may have to again, go deep within ourselves to rebirth. But we've got to face our pain. If we're going to go into ourselves with Pluto's energy, then we're going to have to face up to some things, I feel like Lilith, the Black Moon Lilith's energy always follows Pluto's energy anyway, in some form or way. And, in mythology, the Black Moon Lilith, she was the wife of Pluto. Although, she was a wife that had to get away and do a runner. So yeah, we do have some trines which are kind of pretty positive. I do feel like for people that are in their clairvoyance or in tune to their intuition, I feel there's going to be some powerful visualization still going on. Powerful psychic instincts. I wouldn't say so much telepathy, but well, actually I would, because you've got Pallas close by in Aquarius at 21 degrees. But Pallas is more about seeing the picture, seeing the patterns, putting the dots together. That's what Pallas is good at. Normally it's Uranus that gives us that telepathic ability. But in Aries, it's very fast paced, so it's maybe something we can't quite hold on to. Or we may shrug it off, So, yeah, I just feel Neptune in Pisces will still be giving all that psychic energy. But again, Pisces can take us off into la la land and help us build sandcastles in the sky. And, if we're meditating or if we're on holiday laying on a beach somewhere, we can afford to do that. But, when it comes to the reality of what's going on in our world or what's going on in our lives, we have to keep on top of things. And Neptune's energy can tend to make us feel a little bit lazy. So, yeah, Neptune isn't really about routine. It's a boundless energy where, the world can become your oyster. And it can. The good thing though is Pallas is close by in Aquarius. So I think in a way we can use the Neptunian energy at the moment to better our visualization skills, to see the patterns, help us put the dots together and come to some kind of recognition. But for some that can create mental health if they're not really used to that energy. Sometimes, like I said, with Neptune we do see things that we don't want to see, especially when Pallas is close by, because Pallas is all about truth and justice. So some of us may have to face up to things that are going to be quite disturbing. But we do have the moon in sextile to Pallas, so there is maybe a recognition, if we step back and go within and look for the answers, not so much in our soul, but with our higher consciousness, because, I've been talking about getting in touch with the soul quite a lot, but that's not relevant this new moon. What is relevant to me, it's all about us getting in touch with our higher consciousness. And I think we need to take some time out. We've got nothing to prove to anybody. Like I said before, we don't have to prove anything to anyone. We don't even have to prove anything to ourselves. We just have to love and accept ourselves for who we are and what we've got to offer. Nothing more than that. But anyway, moving on to Mercury. Mercury will be entering into pre-shadow on the 14th of May. Now, he won't actually start his retrograde until the 29th of May. But, the pre-shadow starts at the degree that Mercury will retrograde back to. And in this instance, it's 22 degrees. So, as Mercury goes into pre-shadow, he will be in a little stellium with the North Node, Venus, and the Black Moon Lilith. So the Black Moon Lilith, her energy is going to be very active for a while yet. And in this instance, she'll be in Taurus. Now, on the same day as Mercury goes into pre-shadow, the Sun will enter into the sign of Taurus. So, That'll be earlier in the morning. I think Mercury goes retrograde around about midday in the GMT time zone. I think the Sun enters into Taurus early hours in the morning here in the GMT time zone. So it could be the day before in the EDT time zone. Again, Mercury at 22 degrees. Now, the number 22 has been very significant with like Neptune and other planets over the last few months. And again, this is us mastering our mentality, our way of thinking, our way of communicating. Yeah, so I really do feel, there's things coming to light about our financial systems maybe. And or with, again, our sense of self-worth, but with the North Node involved, I would say it's more a collective energy, more a social energy. It really can be about mental health and, people that are suffering financially. But, Taurus can be an energy where he relies on material things for his sense of security, And because they're in opposition to the goddess Juno in Ophiuchus, it's about abusive relationships or being trapped in situations because of financial needs. So I feel that's something that's going to come to light. It's probably especially here in the UK because it's all happening in the public house and it's connected to the home. So yeah, we're going to have to watch that space. It could really also be to do with the education system, because Mercury's also about teaching, and 22 being a master number, mastering your craft or mastering your thought processes, or I don't know, I'm just getting financial system and the educational system. And it is kind of like more a societal collective energy that's going to really affect people in the homes, or maybe there's more injustices to do with the home, to do with the domestic situations with Juno there, to do with abusive relationships or just situations in general. There's a lot going on at the moment, And I just feel it's all going to come into the limelight. Good thing though, when the Black Moon Lilith is conjunct Venus, she does tend to balance out the Black Moon Lilith's energy, so it's not so bad. Do you know what I mean? So at the new moon, she's much further away from Venus. And in this shadow energy, she's not really quite in a conjunction, but she's coming into conjunction. She's very close by. So, in a way, I think it can mellow out the severity. I'm just seeing, stuff coming to light, maybe with mental health as well. So it can also be about, the educational systems and mental health, maybe with our students, or with the teachers. We don't know. Or maybe there's a new curriculum coming in. Or maybe it is just to do with financial system, but I feel this is really very relative to relationships on the domestic front. But with Mercury in shadow being in trine to Saturn, it can bring in a sense of stability, or maybe some solutions will, come to light as well. So, Saturn's also in trine to the North Node, so it's a very enthusiastic and energetic energy. But, we have to make sure it's for self-empowerment, or to empower the community, to empower our social situation, and it's not all hype, So we just need to be aware of that. So Saturn will enter into retrograde on the 23rd of May. Now he will go into retrograde around about midday, about 10:37 actually, here in the GMT time zone. But he begins his retrograde at 13 degrees, so I really do feel like there is this fight with authority, or it could be a self-empowering time. Now, when Saturn goes into retrograde, he's going back over old ground of his successes and his failures. So the only problem with this is, it can be very calm. It can bring up a lot of karmic, justices. But it's really about looking at where we've been successful and looking at where we've not been so successful and holding on to the successes to improve our lives for the future and learning the lessons from the failures. We mustn't get stuck into past failures or get stuck in times where we've not acted in the right way, maybe towards another person. As long as we're learning the lesson, then we're moving forward. So, Saturn can be a very slow-paced energy, and in retrograde, he really does go over things very cautiously and very studiously. So, it can be very useful because we can go over old documents with Mercury in shadow, we can go over old contracts, we can go over old relationships. We can go over old business plans or, businesses of the past, anything along those lines, and take the lessons that we've learned and take what worked for us to move forward in the future. It can be very empowering, but we mustn't get stuck in the past, in the reminiscing of the past. Especially when it does come to contracts. Now, talking about contracts and getting back to Mercury retrograde, Mercury will spend the whole of his retrograde in the sign of Taurus. So, in a way, we have to be careful with that energy not to get stuck in our heads. And when it comes to contracts, normally I say in a Mercury retrograde, make sure you look at all the details, don't leave anything out, don't skip over things. But in this respect, I would say, we could go over and over and over the same old things until we're really tired and we're not really seeing things clearly. So, we can become too stuck on things or too over analytical with things. So just watch out for that. But I wouldn't say it's a good time to sign contracts. I would wait until the Mercury post-shadow is completely finished before going into contracts if you can. Of course, there's times in our lives where we can't do that. So the best thing to do is to make sure that we're just being very logical and, the pace has got to be irregular. We've got to regulate our pace, our way of thinking, our way of perusing, our way of communicating. It must be paced because Taurus is kind of a slow energy. Saturn is a slow energy. So, we have to be careful that we're not slowed down too much where, it could be that our energy levels have just become very sluggish at that time, but again, I do feel it's a good time to rest, to absorb, and to go over, things that are relevant in our own individual lives or as a collective, to go over old ground and take, the lessons and the blessings and put them into good practice for the future. So I wouldn't say that, with the eclipse coming up in Scorpio as well, I think that occurs the day after Saturn goes retrograde. I think it's on the 26th, I'm not sure. But we do have an eclipse occurring in Scorpio. Now that's going to take us deep. So, there's a really good opportunity with this Saturn going into retrograde of us getting into our own sense of authority, our own sense of self-power. You know, we can look at our wounds or things that we haven't quite healed from yet and work on those for the next week, you know, to prepare us for the eclipse. I'm going to leave this on a good note, because I really do feel with the Saturn going in retrograde, and that's not normal for me to say about Saturn's energy, but in this case, I really do feel we can take a lot of good from it. You know, as long as we are in that higher state of consciousness and not, you know, tied to the material world and what's going on in the material world. Although it is going to obviously affect us, but, you know, we need to come up with solutions and plans and, you know, speak up if we need to speak up. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I just want to send you all peace and much love.